Hello friends, I am Rob here at the lair of OmnusI. I am here again to talk about another topic word from the RPGaDay for 2019. Today is the 26th of August, and the 26th word is idea. So, in my mind, for a creative person, especially if you're interested in this hobby of fantasy, of role-playing games, and of any variety, ideas are one of the most precious commodities you can have. And I generally like to think that many, if not all, of the people who are involved in role-playing games in one way, shape, or form generally tend to be creative people. And creative people have a resource: their ideas. It's not an infinite resource. As you get older, you really start to find you can really struggle sometimes to get a hold of ideas that seem to just come out of the ether for you when you were younger. Mostly because a lot of times you get so choked up with so many different ideas, or you forget great ideas to make room for new ones. And it can be frustrating at the very least. So I thought what I would do is I would share with you my idea notebook. Nothing fancy, just a journal. And this particular one is about half full of front and back handwritten pages. Now, this particular one was really spurred on and when I started doing podcasts. I have 2 podcasts going right now. The first podcast is called Back to the Podcast, which is, of course, from Back to the Future, because my podcasting partner is a huge movie buff. Huge. Knows so much about movies, so much trivia, directors, producers, musical scores, trivia about all these different movies. And I told him so many times, you really need to do a podcast to get all of this stuff down, or at least do a blog. And he's never had time. And then one day he approached me and he's like, do you really want to do a podcast? I don't know how to do it. And I'm like, well, I haven't done a podcast, but I've had a nice little run with my, video logs, my Lair of OmnusI channel. So I bought a podcasting microphone and hooked up my laptop, and the rest, as you could say, is history. So what we do is we watch the movies, and as I'm watching the movie, I take down notes on the movie. I don't have to watch any of these movies ever again. I could read my notes and I could get the entire synopsis of the movie, play by play. That's how I do notes. So, for instance, we started with the movie Police Academy. That was the first one he wanted to do. He actually had the entire series on DVD, so that's what he chose to start with. And so I would write down in my idea book all of this stuff as a synopsis that I could refer back to when we came to do the podcast. Our first ones were rough, so if you do actually go to check out Back to the Podcast, they started out a little rough. We had a learning curve, but I think we've gotten pretty good at talking about the movies rather than just breaking them down scene by scene. Makes for a much more entertaining listen, and they're under an hour long now, where our first ones were a bit on the lengthy side, more so than I would ask anybody to really sit and listen to these days. But we did Police Academy, and we drifted off into a variety of them, and I just started as a matter of course. Whenever he would pitch an idea, or I would come up with an idea for the podcast, I just write it in my journal. Quick ideas, like we talked about movies that desperately needed a reboot or reimagining or retelling of some sort. And I picked the Fantastic Four because I like the comics, but the movies are horrible, or they have been generally pretty unwatchable. And I even like bad movies, so... But I pitched what I thought would make an excellent Fantastic Four movie, and so I wrote down all the details in my idea journal. And I've done this for a lot of things. When I did the Dirk Casterly Last Bard Standing comedy routine, my jokes were all written down on here. So as I was thinking them up at work on my lunch breaks, I would just, sit and write. Having something small and portable like this and able to keep it around you so that when an idea pops into your head, oh, that's a great name for a villain that I want to use. Oh, that's a cool concept that I really, yeah, that's something I want to develop. And then just write it in your journal. Leave plenty of room for fleshing out ideas. Not enough people do this. And it's a shame because, as I said, it's not an infinite commodity. You might think of your mind as an infinite resource to tap whenever, but quite honestly, a lot of your best ideas generally go in your head, rattle around for a bit. You think that's a cool idea, and then something else comes along and distracts you, and you lose it. Maybe later down the road you come back to it, but a lot of times we have such fantastic ideas that don't get used and don't get developed. And honestly, it's a crying shame for some really good ideas. Now, sometimes you'll be lucky and somebody will have an idea and they'll come to you. And their ideas fan your imagination and help you spark some ideas. An example I'll give of that was when Tim Harper came up to me and he told me about his role-playing game. And my first thought was, that really does not sound like my thing. It's kind of a horror-themed fantasy game with a lot of emphasis on physical sacrifice and cost for power and success. And that's not really my bag. I'm more heroic roleplay. But he showed me his ideas in his game, and it got me really excited and really wanting to do something with this. And I haven't forgotten, even if I've gotten a bit busy lately, and he's always busy. The fact that he put out so much as he did is frankly shocking. But every once in a while when I get a chance, I try to poke in there and try to come up with something, because I think he's a great guy to bounce ideas off of, and throwing out ideas allows him to mushroom out ideas and develop things in ways that I wouldn't have done. He certainly has a lot of ideas that I wouldn't go to, and at first my temptation was to say, well, that's different, but I could think of a better way of doing it. And then after a while, I find, I come around to, that's a really good idea. It's an idea I wouldn't have had, and that's important to protect these ideas because there's certainly merit in them. So, yeah. Ideas are great. They should be protected. They should be cherished. They should be developed. And if you are in the hobby, if you are a gamer, if you're a dungeon master or a game master or whatever you want to call yourself, a storyteller, having something like this can be your greatest asset ever. Even if you're used to mostly doing module games where somebody else did a lot of the heavy lifting on creativity, you can come up with names, story hooks, flourishes. Oftentimes, when you're not trying to come up with these things, a random thought will float through your head, and the way your brain works might connect one thing to another, and you might just be in awe of your own brilliance. It happens to me every once in a while. And I know that when I do that, I'm never more than 15 minutes away from being able to run and put it in my journal. So an idea journal, absolutely essential thing. And if you're a player, and as a player, oftentimes you may feel like you don't have all that many responsibilities. You show up, you have your character, you have your dice, and you play. You could do that, absolutely, certainly. But if you really commit to playing, then you can have a different kind of idea book. This one is a log because I am the chronicler of this game. So in just several sessions, I've got pages and pages of handwritten notes. Sometimes I wonder if I'm actually having less fun because I'm spending so much time writing out notes. But if you ever go into this channel, my Lair of OmnusI, and you check out my State of the Dungeon addresses, when I'm doing the State of the Dungeon addresses for the game I'm playing in, I dress up in character. I deliver it as my character would, and this is invaluable to do. But also, one of the cool things about this is when I'm not playing, I can write down notes in this, things that I thought of that my character, in the moment, might capture and spawn some new role-playing opportunities. I can have ideas for things that my character probably should have been interested in or might want to go and develop. And by writing it into this kind of a journal, this kind of an idea book, I can make sure those ideas don't get lost. And I actually can have a character who is more thoughtful, realized, and acts in a way that I, who have degrees of separation between that world and mine, who doesn't find himself trapped in the immediacy of living that life, of having life and death face you eye to eye on any given day as an adventurer. But sometimes I get ideas, and an idea that might have occurred to my character, say Galhard here, might have just as easily come at that moment as it took me a couple of days to eventually come to the same idea, the same want, the same goal. A book like this can be invaluable. So that's my trick, my tip to anybody who's involved in the hobby. And if you talk to writers and screenwriters and that, almost all of them have something like this. They have books on that they can write in ideas as they occur so they're not lost. I know as an actor, I was encouraged to write an acting journal where I would write in character to help me come to grips with the characterization. It's really about the same thing. So, I hope this is a helpful idea. If you already have something like this, thank you for putting up with me talking about it. You are very clever, very intelligent, very handsome, or pretty, depending on your gender. And I thank you very much for indulging me. But otherwise, thank you for joining me again. I am Rob, Lair of OmnusI. If you like this, please like and subscribe. Love to have new subscribers and talk to you, entertain you, hopefully. Maybe give you some great ideas. But thank you once again. I will see you next time I crawl in front of the internet and make one of these videos. Thank you and farewell.